Hey, welcome back to the studio. Well, we're about to have a conversation. Not joining me in the studio, Meister Efriye, who is a fellow at the institution. Well, they like to they like the title, you know. So I'm talking to Surveyor Meister Efriye, who's fellow at the Ghana Institution of Surveyors. Also here in the studio with me is Surveyor Ian Agbenega, who is secretary to the 12th Surveyors Week and 48 AGM Planning Committee. You're welcome, gentlemen, to the studio.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so you'll be very soon. You'll be celebrating what, the 12th Surveyors Week? Is that correct?
Yeah, we are actually. I'll say good afternoon to your viewers. We are actually celebrating the week as we speak now. We started the program from Saturday, the 18th, and that 18th was a fun game at Elwak Sports Stadium, where we brought our families and friends to socialize as surveyors.
Okay. Please, go ahead.
Okay. Then Monday was the press conference where we officially launched the program. And our surveyor president, Marty, was there to address the press. That afternoon, we were supposed to have visited Kolebu Teaching Hospital, but that has been postponed for now. And as we reschedule, we'll be going there.
So this is a week celebration,
Sure.
That what brings us to the question about the relevance of the institution, Ghana Institution of Surveyors. What would you say has been the relevance of your institution to the country and to nation building? Quick one before, so that we can get into our main discussion. You want Surveyor Meister to go?
Yeah. Surveyors are the very heart of the nation, and you cannot talk about in development without talking about the surveyors, because most physical development will be on land, and that is where you come in, because surveyors are in every bit of the property, and we have been in society for that long time. Maybe for the institution of surveyors, we are in Ghana now, we are about 48 years now.
48 years?
Yeah, 48 years now, and we played various roles as quantity surveyors, as property managers, valuation professionals, and as land surveyors.
Okay, so why is it that after all these years of your existence, maybe you can help us with some answers, why is it that we have a problem with land litigation in this country? And you saw the brief pieces of information that we put together. Just in this year, people have died over land. There's still so many litigations over land. What is it that we're not getting right as a country when it comes to land?
We believe that the issue has been enforcing what the laws are.
Okay.
Even though we realize that there are a lot of loopholes in our current law, and for which we at the Institution of Surveyors have proposed major intervention, legislative intervention. The first one that has been on the drawing table for some time now is the issue of having a whole land reform, and we are talking about a new land law, which will be a bill, I believe, very soon, because we had discussion about other stakeholders within the past 2 years on bringing a new law. One of the features which is very, very interesting is the fact that it will criminalize virtually land guards.
Okay.
That is a new feature of the law if it comes into fruition. The issue of land guards, anybody who would be engaging land guards would himself be engaging in a criminal activity. That is one feature of the new land law. Another aspect which we have also been pushing, which fortunately had gone into the last parliament, we don't know because it went into the second reading, is propose a new legislation on regulation of estate agency.
Okay.
Virtually what we are saying is that there is going to be a new real estate authority which will look at all facets of, because one, it's going to make the use of cash in dealing in real estate illegal, so that you can have a trail. So that you know people who are selling, people who are not supposed to sell will also be known. So we think that if we bring, apart from sanitizing the market where you have people who are not even qualified. Because you asked me a question, and let me bring you back to another issue because a lot of people carry themselves as surveyors in town, and unfortunately they are not qualified surveyors, and that is one being that we have in the country now. And we think that these two legislations, if they come in place, would help address some of the problems that we face.
Okay.
And to adapt to that, just a bit to adapt to that, we constantly advise the public that when a land is being sold to you, do a basic search. Do a basic search of that property.
I think people still do the basic search, but at the end of the day, they still come face to face with land guards, and they still come face to face with the reality that actually they've been duped.
And that is where I come in again, as so many quacks surveyors operating in the system. Because if you have such a conflicting role where you have this professional surveyor in charge of affairs, and you also have quack surveyors going to the bush doing their own thing with unsuspecting clients, you have such problems. You know, before you purchase any land, you need to know the source, who you are buying that property from, who the owner of the property is. I think if you do those basic search, you shouldn't have.
Well, I can tell you of stories of people who have done the basic search. In fact, there's a current running story in Adringano, and I'll come back to that briefly. But Surveyor Meister, once again, you mentioned the land reform that seeks to criminalize land guards. At what point do you differentiate between a land guard and someone who is just there to make sure that nobody encroaches on my land? Is that clear in the bill you're proposing?
Yes, what we are saying, that if you think that you have a problem and you think that the courts are there to address your concern, apart from that, make a report first to the police, and then it will be the issue about these new reforms is that, especially when we talk about the estate agency law, what it seeks to do is that everybody in the chain will be known. Everybody in the chain in such a way that you don't have, because maybe there's a middleman who is selling to an
Okay, just so we are clear, you're saying that the regulation on estate agencies will be in the form that people do not buy land, do not pay cash, and that it is done through, say, a bank process?
Yes, a bank.
So that we can trace.
Yes,
okay.
yeah. Because not only are we trying to address the issue that you just shown, we also, and we and the government and other stakeholders think that real estate has been an issue where people launder money. And people steal money, and you think that the most convenient place to hide the money is to go into brick and mortar. And so that we'll have that trail, because I can just steal money and then just give it to you, then you are. But if we have the trail, it will come to a time where somebody could ask you questions. Where did you get all this money?
Okay.
What have been your tax obligations along the line? Okay. In the way that you acquired these assets.
Okay, yeah. I see. That's very interesting. Well, let's move on and talk about a very interesting story. Like I said, the Adringano story, where the people there say, well, we bought the land, we've paid for it. They've actually erected their properties on the land. The next thing they see is someone breaking down their properties because someone else says they own the land. In that case, how will these reforms, how will these legislative reforms that you're proposing help to address such issues?
Yes, so the issue is before, let me tell you, what we see around are symptoms of indiscipline in the society. The fact that somebody sells land that doesn't belong to him, the fact that somebody sells land that is supposed to belong to a family without accounting to the family, because and virtually, because if you now virtually most lands have become family and stew lands, so that people hold fiduciary interest in the land in trust for others, but people sell this land without accounting to anybody. Right. Yes, so if we have a situation where we have rules and regulation that would sanitize the situation, we think that it will bring this problem to the minimum.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hopefully so. So you're celebrating 48,
But,
no,
but, but,
12.
but let me get back to this Nigerian Ghana situation. Because related to this is the issue of planning.
Okay,
Because because we think that Ghana has got into a situation where it should not be possible for anybody just because I hold a piece of land to sell. One must sell land with planning permission.
Okay.
So that if you say that the area is ripe for development, the land should be sold with permission. So that I have had this piece of land properly demarcated with proper permit for it, so that the area is zoned properly. Then we believe that if you've gone through the process, we would identify the real stakeholders in the land. What is happening now is that I have a piece of land, you sell all sorts of things, then the usual, stop, bring permits, and they don't mean anything. You and I know that they don't mean anything. But you get into proper regime where land is sold or leased out with proper layout, with properly what you are supposed to do with the land. In that, when we have that basic thing, we think that we are in a process of getting over our problems.
Getting over our problems, hopefully so. And I was going to refer you back to what you're celebrating, the 12, is it the 12 year or something?
No, 12 Surveyors Week.
12 Surveyors Week.
And the 48th.
And the 48th
Annual
AGM.
General
You're having an
Meeting,
yes,
AGM.
you're having an AGM.
Yeah.
One of the issues that have come up recently has been the vice president's building and how much it was costing us. Now, your organization has called for you actually volunteering your expertise to help us value this land. How far have you come with that request that you put in?
We have made a call to society. We think that it's about time that things were done well, in such a way that we have transparency over this issue.
Okay.
You recall that maybe about 8 years ago, similar thing happened when we had people were contesting as to how much it costs to put up the Flagstaff House or Jubilee House in those days, and there was a lot of noise made, and nothing else was said about it. We think that it's about time that the public got to know what really happened, so that if we are spending the public purse, it's being spent judiciously. What we have done is that we've made an appeal, waiting for government to respond to our request. Then
okay. So your request went to who specifically?
No, what we said is that yes, we put this thing in the public domain. So whoever is in charge, who wants to invite us, and so not only are we looking at that we would learn lessons from this.
How about getting to someone specifically and directly? Because if you put it out there, people will talk about it, they'll hear, but they would decide not to respond to you anyway because you have not approached us directly. How about approaching government in a formal way, directly?
No, we are trying to do that because what we said is that we don't want the thing to be just, we want public to learn some lessons out of this, and so that we are not assuming at this stage that there were any untold things over them, but so that the truth would come out. Okay. We'll have systems in place.
Right. Okay. Well, so today the 12 Surveyors Week and 48th Annual General Meeting took place actually in Accra, and the technical director who is in charge of lands at the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources, Suleiman Mahama, shared some views on the menace, what we're talking about.
As part of the vision of my ministry regarding the management of natural resources in this country, we intend to shorten the time and duration for registration of lands. My administration as a minister will make efforts to lessen the hassle and struggle Ghanaians endure in their effort to register their legally acquired lands. In view of this, ladies and gentlemen, the government shall rely very much on certified surveyors to achieve what it has proposed to do. The ministry shall collaborate with the Ghana Institution of Surveyors in all areas that its expertise may be required in promoting the national development agenda.
Okay, well, all right. So Sorry, we're having a very quick chat here in the studio. So they've been speaking about it, and I wouldn't want to belabor the issue about getting specific, going to the specific people about the land, about the vice president's building. Let's get into what you're celebrating and why you think that Ghanaians should pay attention to you, as even as a professional body, as you are. Why should we pay attention to this particular celebration at all?
I'll start by mentioning our theme for the celebration, the Surveyor and the Sustainable Development Goals. And by that, we want to look at the areas where the Surveyor is relevant in the attainment or achievement of those goals.
Of the Sustainable Development Goals.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, there are 17 in number, and out of that, we have eradication of hunger, eradication of poverty, provision of sustainable energy, and whatnot. We as surveyors are saying that among all the 17, when you take all the 17 goals, basically relates to the issue of land. And when the issue of land comes in, the surveyor also comes in.
Okay.
A typical example is where the goal talks about eradication of hunger. Hunger naturally has to do with agriculture.
Okay.
Agriculture is land.
Okay.
So how do you obtain your land to produce food? The surveyor is there. You talk about energy, sustainable energy. How do you build your dams? How do you build your gas thermal plants and whatnot? Lay your gas pipelines.
It all boils down to land.
Yes.
Basically.
It also talks about infrastructure.
Okay.
How do you provide infrastructure without a surveyor? You need a surveyor. You need quantity surveyors, you need land surveyors, you need valuers in there to provide that sustainable infrastructure we are talking about.
Okay.
So as surveyors, we are trying to position ourselves in these goals and letting the public know that without we the surveyors, the attainment of those goals.
Do you think it's enough for you to want to put yourself out there and say you can't do this without us? Maybe people are looking to see something more. People are looking to feel your presence. You said your organization has been in existence for how long? 40 years, you said?
48 years.
Over 40 years.
Yes.
Over 40 years. So people want to feel your presence so that when you take, for instance, the issue of the vice president's house, people are looking to see perhaps some radical movements, and then they'll begin to feel your presence, and then they can.
You see,
Don't you agree?
The radicalism you talk about here,
It's just an example.
The issue about the vice president house boils down to figures, boils down to specifications. Yeah. We as surveyors will not just take what is the media and start running with it. Yeah. That is why we came out and called for an investigation. And in that press release, we have made ourselves available, that we have the expertise. If the government wants to probe that project, we have the expertise. We can provide people. We are not even asking for a fee.
But yeah, you don't even need to ask for a fee. But
sure.
do you think,
nation building.
And it's just a question.
Yeah.
Do you think that it is enough to put out a press release and say, we are there, we're waiting for you to? That's basically the posture. It's like, we're there, we're waiting for you to come to us. Do you really seriously, honestly think they'll come to you?
Okay, let me put it.
Please.
Normally you would have a ministry that would be responsible. You remember the time that we put up this thing, that was the time that the president was forming his government. Okay. And we thought that would rather wait for the ministers to be in place, so that then we can take the issue formally from there. Okay. Yeah. Having said that, you are talking about the relevance of the surveyors in society.
Just so we can feel, as we celebrate, you celebrate your week, that we can feel your presence more.
If you recall, this 17 goal SDGs in Ghana were launched about a year ago. Okay. And I'm sure you and I haven't heard anything about. We think that it's something that the people went to the UN and just talk. We think that it's about time that we practicalize it, because it affects basically our way of living. Okay. But having said that, there are issues that we talked about, legislation, and we think that if there's a change, it's about time that we all comply with the change. Okay. I'll tell you, when you talk about litigation on land, one of the areas where there had been so much litigation and so much indiscipline is the area where government used to own land. Government used to own the property. And before maybe I go, let me digress a little. Until quite recently, if you were flying over Accra, you could see clearly who owned the land ownership pattern just by flying over Accra.
Really?
Yes, you could see. What you saw was that areas that were owned by government looked green. Others looked brownish and all sorts of things.
How has that changed?
What a lot has changed these days because we think that some of us think that we haven't democratized the planning process.
Okay, what does that mean?
We haven't democratized because the planning process should be owned by all of us. Let's say that I have some money and I go into an area and look at this is all a single-story building that I find. Because I have money, I start putting up a 6-story building in the midst of a single-story building. And we think that it's about time because that everybody in society talked about. I'll give you another example.
Let's wrap up on this conversation.
Yes, you've had instances where government lands that have been paid for the last 50, 60 years, it gets in, then whether it's at the governmental level or whether it's at the institutional level, these lands, pressures from the chiefs, even though government had paid for these lands are released to the chiefs because of agitation. Even though the Constitution provides, Article 26 provides the mode of releasing lands that are not used by government, and people do that illegally because these lands are acquired by executive instrument. So it's about time that we also had institutional arrangements where if government was going to look at properties, then it had. Then the issue about the transition, the presidential transition, you will realize that we had all sort of confusion around this, especially who government owns what. Okay. And we think that this is an area where the surveyors could look at, and let's see whether the Transitional Act, we would not want society to even review the Transitional Act in such a way that we distinguish between what government owns so that we have the management continuously running, not until the end of a new government, then we start running around
looking for
what is where and what is nowhere.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so let's wrap up with what's next we should expect in the celebration of the surveyors in this country.
Exactly. Tomorrow we have our presidential lecture, which comes off at GIMPA, the GB Hall. We are inviting.
What's in the presidential lecture?
Presidential lecture is normally the time our president tells us his vision.
Okay. And basically to look at, because some of the trending issues and that is SDGs. But one thing that we are highlighting, which you did allude to, is the fact that we have a lot of unlicensed surveyors who are practicing, and we think that it's about time that legislation on surveying came up.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So tomorrow you're inviting the president?
Yeah, we are inviting you, the media. We are inviting fellow surveyors. We are inviting general public to be present at that function. In the afternoon, we'll have our AGM. No. I mean the surveyor president. Yes.
Okay.
Not the president of Ghana. We are talking about the surveyor president.
Right. And you are going to be looking into some of the issues that you've raised about land reform laws, and then about regulation of estate agencies, and about licensing for surveyors, so that we don't have so many of quack surveyors in the system.
We need a legislative backing.
Okay, so these are some of the things that you're looking at.
Will be in the presidential
that will inure to the benefits of Ghana.
Even as you tie your celebration into the SDGs. Yeah. All right. We'll see a very big.
Saturday, we'll have a presidential ball at the Movenpick Ambassador Hotel.
You guys are rich guys, aren't you?
Oh, sure.
I see.
Sure. We are not poor.
We are not poor. No.
Well, you don't have to be poor, but you can be rich and be very rich as well. Okay, very interesting discussion. And what I am taking with me is that we need to look at legislative instrument, instrument that basically regulates what we do with our lands. That something that criminalizes land gas will perhaps be interesting, but of course it has to be fine-tuned so that you can see the clear lines between who is a land guard and who is protecting his property, of course. And then also talking about regulating the estate agency. The estate agency, of course, seems to have been allowed to flourish without any serious regulation. So it'll be very interesting to find out how we're able to do that, even at the state that we are. And then we'll look at flashing out the quack surveyors who are in the system, who make land acquisition for you and I very difficult and very complicated. Well, if you've got a land, or if you intend to buy a land, they say that make sure that you do your background check before you go into it. That's what we do all the time. But hopefully, well, deal with professional surveyors to say. I believe that we do all of that, but we still get to meet problems. But hopefully, it will be over. I've been in the studio with Surveyor Meister Efriye, who is a fellow at the Ghana Institution of Surveyors, and also Surveyor Ian Agbenyega, who is secretary to the 12 Surveyors Week and 48 AGM Planning Committee. They've been telling us about how relevant the surveyors are in this country and what they're doing, especially celebrating themselves, but linking it up to how to achieve the SDGs. Okay. So President Akufo-Addo has appointed a secretary to the cabinet, and that is a very fresh information coming from the presidency, and it reads, pursuant to Article 76, Clause 3 of the Constitution, the President of the Republic, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, has appointed Ambassador Mercy Yvonne Deborah Kakari as secretary to the cabinet, effective February 14, 2017. She becomes the first woman in Ghana's history to hold this position. And I believe they find it necessary to hammer that in because they talk about 30% of women in governance. Ambassador Mercy Yvonne Deborah Kakari is a career diplomat and was, until her appointment, Ghana's High Commissioner to Australia, with concurrent accreditation to New Zealand, Fiji, Papua New Guinea, and the countries in the Pacific region. So congratulations to Ambassador Mercy Yvonne Deborah Kakari. Mercy Yvonne Deborah Kakari has been appointed as secretary to the cabinet. And this, as we try to pull up a picture of her, just so you know who the secretary to cabinet is, I could just, well, we're still trying to pull it up, but it's good to have women representation up there, isn't it? There she is. There she is. Ambassador Yvonne, or Mercy Yvonne Deborah Kakari, who is the new secretary to cabinet there. Her appointment took effect on the 14th of February. Once again, congratulations to her. Okay. You're still watching The Pulse. My name is Gifty Andopia. I'll take a very quick break. When I return, we go into Parliament. Today, they had a debate on the State of the Nation's address. You know what to expect, don't you? When we're talking about the minority and the majority, they always have one side. I'll tell you more about that when I return. Please stay.